Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Holly and I'm an assistant psychologist working at St George's Hospital. I'm going to be talking to you about some of the common psychological challenges of surgery. As we know, it's not just your body going through surgery, it can also affect the mind, so we can think about what might come up for you and what might help for you to navigate this. If you have any questions, please do put them in the chat box. I'm not here today, but I can get Genevieve or a member of the team to forward on any questions that come up and get back to you with those answers. So these are just some of the concerns that you might be experiencing. So being told that you're going to have surgery can bring up a lot of very understandable concerns, and it's normal to be apprehensive about surgery. When surgery is needed because of changes to your physical health, you're also dealing with the emotional impact of that, which may mean that you're feeling shocked, worried, scared, and these are all very normal emotions. It's particularly important to think about the time frame. So for some of you, you may have been waiting eagerly for surgery. You want to get it over and done with. For others of you, it may feel as though surgery is happening very quickly after your diagnosis. So you might still be processing the diagnosis itself when you're coming in for surgery, and therefore it can be a lot to deal with. So fluctuations in your emotions is very normal. There may be practical things that are on your mind, such as what to bring with you, as well as thinking about the impact that this will have on work, childcare, pets, and sort of the stressful impact of that, having to think about the more practical things as well as what's going on emotionally. Lots of people just don't like being in hospital. You have that loss of a familiar environment, a loss of independence. For example, if you're a very independent person, you may find it difficult to adjust to having to rely on someone for something to be done for you, like, for example, assistance with getting a wash, getting yourself up in the morning and ready for the day. Similarly, you may have concerns about being away from your family while you're in hospital, as well as worries about the procedure, whether it will go okay, and how you'll feel afterwards. There are now additional questions and concerns in relation to COVID and how things will work to keep you as safe as possible. In terms of support and isolation, it's important to acknowledge that everyone will be coming from a different context. So some of us are lucky enough to have support and we feel comfortable using it and asking for that extra help. Whereas others may feel more isolated and we might feel uncomfortable asking for more help and support, or we just don't know how to ask for that support. So today we'll have a think about some of these concerns and what might be helpful for them. Now, these concerns might not come up for everyone or only come up when you're actually in hospital, which is why it's helpful to think about them now in order to minimise the impact of these worries. So, as I mentioned before, surgery is more than just a physical procedure. Difficult thoughts and feelings can come up, and these may be at different stages. So it's easy to focus on just the day of surgery, but it's important to think about before and after and how that might be tricky too. And we'll talk through what can help at each of these time points. We can also show emotional difficulties in different ways. So for some people, our anxiety or worries might be very obvious and we might be very aware of them. For others, it might be more covert, so we might just feel more irritable than usual. And we might get upset or worried about things that wouldn't normally bother us, or we might not sleep as well. And these can be signs that we might, have some concerns in our mind and we might not have the coping strategies in place in order to manage them. So we're going to spend some time now thinking about what we can do to help ourselves prepare emotionally to manage as best as possible. We'll be thinking about before surgery, when you're in hospital, and time when you're discharged from home as well. So what can you do to prepare yourself for surgery? Make room for your emotions. It's understandable to get upset at times or feel anxious, angry, or down. And this doesn't mean you're not coping. It's just part of being a normal human being who is reacting to difficult circumstances. Also, when we try to shut these down, they can become more psychologically distressing. They'll stick around in our mind more, or they may get displaced into unhelpful behaviours, for example, pushing people away when we feel angry or anxious, as opposed to communicating with people and talking it through with them. Therefore, if we understand these emotions, we can develop strategies to manage these emotions better. Trying to be positive and optimistic all of the time is unrealistic, so it's why it's important to make room for these difficult feelings, and it will tend to help them pass sooner versus pushing them away. Perhaps you could think about identifying some triggers for you and some things that trigger these difficult emotions. So for example, what makes you anxious or gets you down? Are you someone who really struggles being away from your family and loved ones? Is it needles that might trigger you to feel very scared and anxious? Do you have worries about pain? Is missing time off work going to be stressful and frustrating for you? Talking to others about how you're feeling can really make a difference. So once you've identified those triggers, you can put things in place to manage them. And now is a great time to do some planning, and it's brilliant that you guys are here today, and it shows that you're here to get ready and plan, not just physically, but mentally. It can also be helpful to think about how you'll keep in touch with family and friends while you're in hospital. It's important to ask yourself if you want lots of messages to keep you busy, distracted, and on your phone, or if you would rather just have one person that you update with how you're feeling, and then they can go and update other members of the family and friends. For example, having a WhatsApp group might be helpful to prevent sending the same types of messages to so many different people, because that might be quite draining or tiresome if you are quite tired in yourself anyway after surgery. So communication is really important, so you can put these things in place prior to coming in. This is also a good time to think about what you'll do to keep yourself busy in hospital. So for example, you could download some podcasts, Netflix series, get some books and word searches ready, and particularly in relation to downloading podcasts or things on Netflix. It might be helpful to do that now, just in case the Wi-Fi isn't as strong when you're in hospital as it is when you're at home. And try to keep your routine as much the same as possible. I know that's difficult when you are in hospital, so you might not be able to go out for a walk and things like that, if that's some of the things that you do to keep yourself psychologically well. But just focusing on what type of things you like doing in your daily routine and how maybe you can bring that into hospital as well. So if we focus a bit more on coping psychologically in hospital, it's really important to stay actively involved in your care. So when you come into hospital, if it's going to help you understand what's happening, what's going on, then make sure you ask questions and stay actively involved in the process. Now, for some people, knowing exactly what's going on or knowing the exact procedure, the exact time, more information sometimes stresses us out, and we actually prefer not to know every single thing that's happening. And that's really important because that will vary from person to person. So some people will find it helpful to be really, really involved and know a lot of information about the procedure, whereas some people will just not want to know. So it's really thinking about what's going to be helpful for you. And being in hospital can definitely put us into a bit of a panic mode. And so this can be more difficult because our normal coping strategies might not be as accessible when we do get into this panic mode. So it's worth thinking about what might be helpful for you in hospital. So for example, doing some breathing exercises. These are helpful physically, but they're also really helpful mentally as well. They can reduce physical symptoms of anxiety, such as decreasing your heart rate. There are lots of good relaxation and mindfulness apps, and again, it's worth practicing these sooner rather than later, and worth exploring now. So maybe you could download one of the apps. So there's Calm, there's one called Unmind, and there's also some really good content on YouTube as well. Distraction can be really helpful at times when we feel like we've been sat down for a long time, not doing much, our brain sort of wandered, and we've maybe gone down into a path of overthinking. So having some things to draw on, such as music, podcasts, audiobooks, puzzles, and yeah, getting these sort of prepped and downloaded in advance would be a good step. And we know that when we're feeling panicked or under threat, our thinking can start to fall into a less helpful style. So for example, all or nothing thinking or catastrophizing. So examples of these would be, oh, I'm never going to get better, or I'm not going to get better quick enough, or things are going to be like this for a while. So it's really important to sort of catch some of these thoughts and recognize when we are getting into this pattern of thinking, and take a step back from these thoughts and focus on something that the sort of thought processes and sort of things that you would ask your friend if they were in this situation can be really helpful to stop you panicking and getting into this quite rigid mindset. So, for example, what would you tell your friend in this position? What advice and support would you give them? And if we talk to ourselves as if we're talking to a friend, it tends to be a more kinder, a more balanced, and rational way of thinking. Target setting is another good one as well. So it can give you a sense of achievement. So you could take little steps that help you feel like you're making progress, and it helps you identify them if you set those little goals. And you may want to link this in with some of your team members, with the doctors and physios, and sort of having some goals in mind together. Or this could be quite practical things to like get your day started. So, you know, thinking about, oh, at this time I'm going to maybe try get a shower or get myself up and washed, or, you know, getting up and about on the ward if that is possible. You know, just setting yourself some little goals. And then possibly having a self-soothing kit with you. So self-soothing is a strategy to sort of calm yourself down when you might be in that panicked and threat mode. And it's good to think about what you could bring with you that would be comforting and soothing for you. So for example, some soft pajamas, some hand cream, maybe a face wash, maybe some oils like lavender oils and things like that. Think about all the different senses when you're thinking about self-soothing. So your sight, your smells, draw upon all the senses. So psychological adjustments is thinking about after surgery as well as just coming into hospital for surgery. There can be a lot of relief, and there might be times that we feel a bit flat. So the adrenaline that got us through surgery is gone. So this is the time to be really gentle with yourself. Give yourself time to adjust and be realistic about how long it might take to get back to normal. Use the team's advice as to what is realistic if you're unsure, because there might be something in your mind that you think that you should be doing by X amount of time, but this might be really unrealistic. So it can be helpful to communicate with the team. Again, keep communicating and keep the channels of communication open, and hopefully if you have the time, if you put the time into maintaining good communication before surgery, those around you will know how to support you best throughout and after. So if you're finding it hard to negotiate maybe role changes after surgery, so you feel like you're getting better and you don't need to rely on someone as much anymore, just keeping that communication open so they're aware of how to adapt to that change as well. And the ideas that we've discussed about managing our thoughts and emotions and keeping us occupied during surgery apply just as much here as they do prior to and during. So everything we've discussed applies to you if you're a family member or friend of someone who is getting surgery and you're supporting them. So really talking in advance about how best to support the person can be helpful. So often we might make assumptions based on what we would want if we were going through surgery, but these may not apply to the person going through surgery. So it can be really good to check in if this is correct, like your assumptions are correct. And if not, then you can discuss it with them. And recognizing it's hard to support someone going through surgery. So really make the time and support yourself have your own support system as well, because you can't pour from an empty jug. So if you need moments to relax and reconnect with some other things, that's really important to enable you to recharge, because you're going to be in a better position to support someone else. So we've spoken through some ideas that hopefully might be helpful for you, but we can all get stuck at different points and times for different reasons. So now that you know how you might cope on your own psychologically, some of those like techniques and strategies to help, if you find that you are getting stuck and these aren't helping, or you find yourself, you might need that slightly more support, please do reach out for help and communicate with your team about this. So, for example, if surgery is not related to a cancer diagnosis, there are ways to access further support sooner rather than later. So if you communicate with your team members, they might be able to refer you to psychology within the team. So some teams will have psychology within the actual team in the hospital. Some do in the hospital, but some don't. So if they don't, it would be good for you to chat with your GP, who can support you to access your local psychology service, or you can also self-refer. Or if you feel like it's more urgent, your GP and the A&E team are there. That's what they're there for as well. You might have an existing support system, so you might have a counsellor, a psychologist or a psychiatrist already, and just making sure that they're aware that you're having surgery could be really helpful in order for them to support you with that. So if you have a cancer diagnosis, these are the people that you could speak to. So we've got the amazing support of the Macmillan Centre at St George's Hospital, and we've heard from them today, and you sort of have heard about all the sorts of services that they can offer you. We also have our amazing CNSs, and they're a great source of support. Often they've seen people go through these types of surgeries a lot of times before, and they're amazing to listen to your concerns, put your fears and anxieties at rest a little bit about some of the common concerns that will be coming up. And they can also refer you to specialist cancer psychological support team based in the hospital. And this is known as CAPS, and this is the team that I come from. And we're made up of psychology, counselling and psychiatry. And we offer support for people living with cancer, beyond cancer, and people who are carers. You can ask your team to refer you to us, or you can self-refer by calling the number on the screen here. So that's the end of the slides for today. I feel like I've gone through quite quickly, so please do feel free to put any questions that you might have in the chat box, and I will make sure that they are sent to me and we can get back to you in relation to any questions that you might have. Thank you so much for listening today, and please don't hesitate to reach out for that support if you feel like you're getting stuck and you need it. Thank you. Good luck with your surgery.